Welcome to the Hollywood in Toto podcast, the right take on entertainment. The HiT cast offers a weekly look at Hollywood from a conservative point of view. Sick of media bias infecting Hollywood headlines? Tired of stars insulting your views? HiT has your back. Now, here's your host, Christian Toto.
Welcome to episode 121 of the Hollywood in Toto podcast, the right take on entertainment. This week we're speaking with Ben Henderson, the founder of Cautionary Comics. I used to think of comic book titles bombarding you with woke messages. Ben's titles do nothing of the sort. It's all about escapism. Imagine that's a subversive notion in 2019. Crazy. You know, the HitCast talks about free speech a lot, censorship, and other issues from time to time, for sure. But since we last spoke, things got ugly fast. YouTube, sparked by an aggressively woke and thin-skinned Vox.com scribe, went on a tear this week. People like Steven Crowder found their channels demonetized, which is kind of a killer move for someone who gets a huge audience. They need that money. Now, Steven Crowder is not going to get it, at least for the time being. We'll see if things change. But other videos and other video makers got caught up in the sweep, too. It wasn't just conservative people, but of course, he is the main person. He's also the main reason why this all happened. Now, if you want to look up Nazi Germany or some other historical videos, you may not find it, or those videos may not make any money because they got caught up in this whole trap too. Nice job, YouTube. Major platforms are clearly running scared. They're blocking people, punishing people, anyone who doesn't share the right thoughts and feelings. And by right, I certainly don't mean conservative. It's complete opposite. If you're not in the group think, you've got problems. And I've actually thought about that myself. I wonder if some of my messages on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, what if they get banned? What if they kind of cause the people to kind of want to report me for any reason? What defense do I have? I'm just a solopreneur, and there's many people just like me trying to survive, trying to get their message out on the different platforms, and it's getting harder and harder. It's pretty scary stuff. Now, the media, of course, they're no help. They're not going to raise any alarms about this, and heck, they just keep telling us, hey, we're living in the Handmaid's Tale. Meanwhile, we're stuck in George Orwell's 1984. They don't seem to notice. And of course, Hollywood, what are they doing? Silence or nothing. Are they giddy about conservatives being, pushed off our platforms? Are they afraid to say anything? We don't really know. Either way, it's a pretty bad look. And again, as I've said before, history will not look kindly on their inaction and their lack of outrage. So what comes next? Well, without the cultural pushback, you'll see more and more people getting deplatformed, having their videos demonetized. This is not going to stop. This is going to go quicker and quicker. The media's not going to help. Hollywood's not going to help either. I'm actually considering leaving my personal Facebook page. What they did recently by giving up some information about someone who dared to put up a meme critical of the Democrats, well, that was outrageous. They shared that information with a journalist. The journalist shared that information with the world. All of a sudden, this person who just put out a couple of goofy videos is under attack. Why? Because he picked the wrong target. That's just awful. So if I pop away from Facebook in the next few weeks, that's why. I've also signed up for Parler.com. That's Parler. It's like Twitter, but they don't kick people off as quite as regularly as Twitter does. So that's another possible solution. But of course, these things don't happen overnight. It's going to take months and months, if not years, for something like Parler to really compete with Twitter. It may never get there, but if these platforms respect free speech, we have to embrace them. We have to support them. But one thing is really important to note here. To me, and maybe this is my tinfoil hat speaking, I think this is all about Trump. This is about defeating the GOP in 2020. And the more people can get pushed off of social media that are on the right, or the people who are like me, maybe just too afraid to send certain messages across these social media platforms, well, maybe that's the real goal. And by the way, a quick side note, last week's episode, we talked about FBI Lovebirds Undercovers. It's a play that's going to be happening in mid-June in Washington, D.C. This is Phelan McAleer's play that looks at the text between Lisa Page and Peter Strzok. They're the FBI agents who had a romance and also seem to be crafting some sort of strategy to defeat Donald Trump. Now, These are FBI agents, mind you, and they're working against a candidate? Crazy. Now, the play is just going to consist of those texts from people back and forth, two actors, Dean Cain and Christy Swanson, playing those specific FBI agents. But there was an alleged threat of violence, and the theater, the Mead Theater in D.C., decided to shut things down abruptly. So what I did was I reached out to different theatrical groups across the country. Hey, what do you think about this? Is this the right way, the wrong way? Isn't this a clamp down on free expression? Is this a bad thing to uphold? Do you understand what the theater was going through? Just through some basic, simple questions. I really wanted their answers. I reached out to 14 different theatrical groups. Didn't get a single answer. I have to say, I knew it was happening. I knew it was coming, and I'm still shocked. But please, tell me again how the creative community defends free speech. I'll wait. Here's the hit tweet of the week. You know, Henry Winkler will always be Fonzie to me and probably to a lot of people in my generation. But he's also known as one of the nicest guys in Hollywood. That's not so bad. Yet even Henry Winkler can't stop from dabbling in divisive politics. Now, his recent tweet, which I'm going to read in a moment, it isn't as hardcore cruel as something that Rob Reiner or Chelsea Handler might say, but it's a little bit incoherent, but see what you think. Do we talk so much about war now because it would change the subject for our president, or have we just enjoyed too much peace? Hey, Fonzie, maybe events like D-Day just remind us that we're grateful for the greatest generation. I could be spitballing here.
You're listening to the Hollywood in Toto podcast, the right take on entertainment.
The HitCast wants to support right-leaning artists in any way possible. So this episode marks a new feature for the show, the Hit Artist Spotlight. We'll be interviewing creators who may not be nationally recognized yet, but that could change, especially with a little support from you. Why do these people start creating in the first place? What roadblocks are standing in their way? How does their conservatism impact their craft and how they market their material? Our first spotlight subject is C.E. Smith. He's a doctor and the author of an intriguing new novella called Rex. He's like many people who have dreamed about writing someday and completing a whole story, but he actually did it. Heck, that's more than I can say. I hope you enjoy my conversation with a rising artist, C.E. Smith. Well, C.E., glad that you made it on the show. Happy to talk to you. I wonder maybe you can introduce yourself briefly, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get right into Rex and your writing career.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. My name is C.E. Smith. I'm a physician. I specialize in radiology, neuroradiology, and I'm a writer on the side. I have a novel called Brother's Keeper, which was published in the UK, and a new book called Rex. It's a novella. Published just this week.
And have you always been writing, even as a younger person? How did this kind of evolve for you?
Yeah, I knew from a real early age that I wanted to be a writer. I studied English in college, got a master's in English, and worked in LA as a script reader for a time before deciding to go to medical school. And even in med school, I always had an interest in writing. I was always interested in the connections between literature and medicine, and viewing my work in medicine as kind of fuel for fiction. And obviously I'm so busy with work and family. I have 3 kids. I don't have a lot of time, not as much time as I would like to write fiction. But, if you kind of plug away for long enough, you can occasionally finish something. So
nice. That's inspiring. I've got 2 kids. I know the feeling. Talk a little bit about Rex. I read the description. I have not checked out the full novella yet, but it sounds like a really fun Hollywood culture clash, kind of right up my alley. But just give us a little description and why the story in particular intrigued you.
Yeah, no doubt. Rex, the title character, is a defrocked pastor with Parkinson's disease, whose daughter is a movie star, and she unfortunately becomes embroiled in a kind of Hollywood scandal, a tabloid scandal, and he has to make his way among the people in the movie industry. have an interest in religion and faith, mm-hmm. and his experiences in that come into play. I'm also interested in obviously medical issues, and so is Parkinson's disease. My mom had Parkinson's disease, and so I drew a lot from that experience. And for the satirical elements related to the movie industry, I had to think back on the time I spent working out there, reading scripts, and have a lot of friends who work in the industry. And so it was a lot of fun to I hope I didn't go too far with the caricatures. I didn't mean for it to be entirely satire, but
sometimes you can't help it, right?
Sometimes you can't help it. There's a lot to caricature, that's for sure.
Gotcha. So the book came out last month, so it's still pretty new. What are you doing at this point to help spread the word? Obviously, we're talking right now about it, but is that sort of another part of the process? Is, hey, it's not enough for me to get the book out there, and now I have to kind of let people know about it. Talk about that challenge and what you've done so far.
Well, yeah, my marketing campaign is so far limited to emailing friends and family, and hopefully I can talk to some more people like you. And I have the official release date was Monday, mm-hmm. So I'm just getting started. We'll see. Maybe I'll be able to do some readings in the local bookstores. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Hoping for the best.
I think there's almost everyone says, I've got a book in me. I want to write. I want to do this. I've got the great American novel just in my head. And it never happens. And now you've written several books at this point. When you complete the process, is there sort of do you learn something about yourself no matter how the book comes out? What is that feeling like? Because I think a lot of people think about it, never get there. And since you've gone the whole journey, I was kind of curious your reaction to, doing more than dreaming about it.
Yeah, well, I've more often than not, I don't get there. I've finished a few books, some unpublished, but I've started a lot more than that. And I think, sometimes I don't think I have the patience to make it through, but when I do, and I feel like I've worked out all the problems in a way, there's an incredible satisfaction in that. It's like finishing a race, I guess. Mm-hmm. And that's why you do it. There's just a profound satisfaction in finishing something and feeling like you've done it as well as you can.
Yeah. I've talked to some conservatives who make art that is strictly apolitical. They just want to have escapism, give people pleasure reading it. Other people want to have maybe a bit of a message in their stories. Where do you think that Rex falls, and does that sort of maybe kind of capture your take on creating art like this?
Yeah, I tend, I think when you get politics into fiction, you run the risk of becoming more like a pamphleteer. Of course, you can't ignore people like George Orwell who've done this really well. But I tend to avoid explicit politics. I think I'm tackling enough with religion. I really kind of work my faith into these stories, and there's obviously a lot of overlap between religion and politics. But I'm more interested in the spiritual side, and but that marks me as a conservative for sure. I can't. Everything I write is permeated with ideas of redemption and sin, mm-hmm. grace, our relationship with God, belief, and I think our culture more and more is falling in line with the sort of worldview of secular materialism, mm-hmm. Where there's no meaning behind anything. And I just can't stand that nihilism. I see it in so many of the movies and TV shows and books I read these days. I think my work is, if nothing else, it offers something different from that.
Mm-hmm. Are these characters in Rex where you could revisit them with another novel or novella, or is it sort of this is done? My next project may be something wildly different.
Yes, my next project probably will be something wildly different. The things I'm working on are wildly different, but I do have other stories unpublished, with these characters. It might be that I revisit them and make something of it. If people like this book, maybe I will.
Gotcha.
But yeah.
One last question. I kind of alluded to this before. There's always the people who want to write the book, want to do something, and they never do it. Is there anything, maybe from a motivational point of view, that you can share that kind of puts you over the edge, that didn't stop you at any point, but you actually completed it? What's the difference between your approach and maybe other people's approaches?
I think that, the best advice I ever got was to write an hour a day and to do it in the morning before anything else. Sometimes, for people of faith, the morning is a time for devotions, but I've, developed a habit a long time ago of just writing for an hour every morning. And, the stuff comes along slowly and it gestates in your mind for the remaining 23 hours of the day, I guess. But for that 1 hour, you have to just be, you have to be actively writing, even if it means just looking at a blank screen. That was the best advice I ever got, and it got me through a lot of pages over many years. My work schedule doesn't allow it so much now, or the three little kids. But that's all. That's the best advice I ever got.
Well, it's simple but good advice. So
words on the page. Yeah.
All right, then. Well, C.E. Smith, thank you so much for sharing some time with us. The new novella is Rex. Check it out right now. There'll be links on the show notes page at HollywoodInToto.com. And keep up the work, keep up the writing. And I love your spirit. I love your enthusiasm. And don't quit. I think that's the biggest thing. I've heard that a lot about podcasting. People start it, they get a few episodes under their belt, and they're done. I'm not quitting, and I hope you're not quitting too. C.E., thanks again.
Thank you.
I'm Patrick Corelchi.
And I'm Adriana Cortez, and we're the hosts of Red Pilled America, a new storytelling podcast.
Red Pilled America is not another talk show covering the day's news. We are all about telling stories. Stories Hollywood doesn't want you to hear. Stories the media mocks. Stories about everyday Americans that the elites ignore. You could think of Red Pilled America as audio documentaries, and we promise only one thing: the truth.
Visit the iHeartRadio app right now to listen to Red Pilled America.
My hit tip of the week is the other F word. Now, calm down. It's not quite what you think. This is a documentary about what happens to punk rockers when they settle down, put the guitars down, and start a family. Well, the same thing that happens to most of us. They become daddies, and suddenly they're not so cool anymore. I know that feeling. It's just part of the reasons why the other F word is such a treat. The film interviews a bunch of rock and roll types who had to shift gears, sometimes pretty dramatically, after becoming fathers. It's sweet and funny. It's a real testament to the transformative power of fatherhood. Now, the next time you're at a playground, you see a tatted up dad kind of pushing his kid around gently or saying, "Good job, good job," you might be reminded of this documentary. The Other F Word is streaming right now on Amazon Prime.
Don't touch that dial. You're listening to my daddy's podcast.
Ben Henderson loves comic books, but he's burned out by modern titles that are obsessed with progressive politics. Get woke, go broke? Well, it's happening to some pretty big titles, but he's sick of it. Just tell us a story. That's why we're reading comic books in the first place. Let us get lost in the experience. He figured he wasn't alone with that frustration. That's why he created Cautionary Comics. The new lineup, including titles like Kill All Men and Offworlder, put the focus on fun grindhouse stories that grab you by the scruff of the neck. That's what matters. Ben shares how he retrofitted years and years' worth of his own screenplays into the ultimate shared universe. Take that, MCU. He also talks about the current state of the comic book industry and so much more in the latest HitCast interview. Here's my chat with Ben Henderson. All right, well, Ben, thanks for joining the show. I was reading a little bit about Cautionary Comics, and this one quote from Mike Barron, your colleague, really did jump out at me, and I thought it was interesting. He said, "You'll be hard-pressed to find a conservative message or any political message in a Cautionary Comics title." And I thought that might be kind of a fun place to start, is Maybe you can expand on that, and because it almost seems bizarre in 2019 that any artist would even say that. But obviously, it's a key part of your mission. So, dig into that a little bit. What can you share about that element of Cautionary Comics?
Yeah, absolutely. So the main mission when we started Cautionary a couple of years ago now, I founded the company really to get my collection of stories out into the market just to see them made. This is something I've always wanted to do. I've written screenplays for many, many years and books and short stories. And then from 2006 to 2016, I crafted them into one shared universe. So 50 titles all connected together in a pure comic book universe. And I wanted to get back to those, what I call pure comics, which really focused on escapism, your enjoyment as a customer, not to get in the way, not to have any politics or any agendas getting in the way of the story. So what we focus on, the four axioms, the four pillars of Cautionary is story, character, action, and fun. And that's all that our comics are going to have. The best art, the best new adventures, amazing new characters that people, hey, if you're going to give us $5 for some enjoyment, we're going to give you escapism, take you out of the rat race of the day to day. And, part of that is being inundated with political messaging. I think we've seen that in our entertainment too much. Definitely lately, but I would say over the past 10 years, and we wanted to be something different. We've collected comics, we've made comics, and when I say we, it's the Cautionary Comics team, the founders, myself, Chuck Dixon, Mike Barron, and Brett R. Smith, and we agree. We wanted to get back to that standpoint of pure comics, and we feel we've done that. We have many more to come, so we're excited to be doing it.
I can feel the excitement, so I appreciate that. One thing you also said in other interviews that you said it's got an 80s style in some of the titles that you're working on. Can you tell me what, I'm a kid of the 80s, so that immediately connected to me, but how would you describe that tone? Because I think there is a very specific 80s tone that is different than other decades, and I think it's often something that we keep going back to, and I think that's a good thing.
Me too. I mean, from entertainment to music to comics, whatever it is you're looking at, the entertainment, from my perspective, and some of it's nostalgia, right? A lot of people, but I can think objectively, and I can point to specific examples in movies and comic books where it's really changed from let's just take comics, right? That's where we're at. Mike Barron has a great line about our stories and stories in general, that the comics have to grab you by the throat from the cover to page 1 to panel 1 as it moves on, right? It's focused on action. It's focused on adventure, intrigue, drama, horror. What you see a lot today are very slow-moving, talky pieces that try to get out a political message. And, that's not the way it was in the 70s and 80s, when there was really a height, from my perspective, and it goes back further than that, but, comics, movies, music, it used to be primarily about escapism for the customer. You're going to trade some of your hard-earned money to use your precious free time to enjoy something. And we want to make it where that's as enjoyable to you, not us feeling like we've got some message across to you. Nobody wants to be lectured to, right? Nobody does. Yeah. Especially when you just want to relax.
Yeah, good point. I know this is like picking one of your children. You can't pick just one, but let's highlight one Cautionary Comics title and just give us kind of a sneak peek and kind of whet our appetites about why it's fun, why it's different, why it's action-packed.
Yeah, well, I'll talk about just a couple. The first one we went to market with was Ravage, Kill All Men. And that's about 2 Army veterans that crash into a mystical jungle populated by a lost tribe of warrior women that hunt and kill men. So the guys have to figure out a way to adapt or die trying. And, that's the one that I co-wrote with Chuck Dixon. It's based on my original screenplay, and it's just been a lot of fun. We've had a lot of reaction to it. We were worried me and the artist, when we first launched it, we set our goal for about 5,000, and we got 50. So that was pretty great. We were really happy about that. Then up next is The Offworlder, the Protector of Sa Ra. It tells the tale of a 7th century Scottish warrior a lord in Scotland, Henry Gunn, as he leads his clan in a ferocious battle with Vikings. But as they're about to be victorious, he's ripped from time and space by an alien race that need a warlord to help them fight another alien race from conquering all known space. So he becomes a troubled demigod, kind of in the tradition of, Silver Surfer. It's a star-spanning, big saga, and it connects to all other 50 stories. So that one is offworldercomic.com, and it's coming next.
Ben, I think you missed your calling. I think this was the 1970s. You should be doing Grindhouse movie commercials because you got that great energy and excitement and passion for this material. I love it.
One of my favorite words. So part of my and honestly, Brett Smith, not Brett, Mitch Breitweiser, my buddy Mitch Breitweiser said, "Man, your scripts are like a combination of Spielberg and Grindhouse."
There you go.
And I loved that. I love that because that's kind of that's me.
Well, one of the things I wanted you to do for me and for our listeners is what's going on in the comic book business today. I read stories, I hear snippets. I'm not actively engaged in this arena, and you are. So, this could be like an hour conversation. We don't have that time, but just give us kind of a snapshot of what's happening in the business where you need a Cautionary Comics just to entertain. Can you boil it down for us?
Sure, absolutely. I think it's really symptomatic of the larger entertainment industry all over, whether it's entertainment news, quote unquote news, or movies, that it's really now driven from an ideological perspective, a political perspective. It's not about entertainment. It's about getting approval from a peer group that only exists maybe in New York and LA, right? Marvel used to, the big mantra for Marvel was, we're going to write what we see outside our window. Well, their windows are now big high-rises in New York and LA. So they don't really relate to everyday people. And I really noticed that, a couple of years ago. I've been a collector for 20 years. My father got me started, and it's something we enjoyed as a family growing up. And, I was really excited to pass that on to my children. Me and my oldest son were going to comic shops, and the stories were just really, number one, they weren't fun. Number two, some of them were just flat out inappropriate for children, and they weren't labeled that way. And then, in the comic shop, which, in the 80s, it used to be a very communal place. Everybody was welcome. It was very, friendly and opening. Well, now if you don't have the right political agreement, or if you just stay neutral, you often get harassed in these spaces, whether it's you're trying to create in Hollywood, or you're trying to go to a comic shop, or you're trying to play, music, whatever it may be. So we wanted to, really get out there. And when I saw this happening, number one, I figured I knew what I was writing. I went to school at Duke Ellington School of the Arts for writing. I took a UCLA class, and, I showed my writing around. I figured it has to be better than a lot of what I was seeing, just honestly. And, a lot of the pros agreed that I was talking to, and now we're collaborating and launching a brand new universe.
Gotcha. Was there ever an impulse along the creative path to write more right of center political, or was that sort of not really your mission at all at any point?
Well, so it was really just to tell my stories, honestly. I mean, the basis of these stories were like grindhouse flicks I wrote in the 80s and 90s. Right. So I had a couple of approaches from that. First, it was actually three. First, I got, people saying, hey, look, those are great movies. And I actually owned a film studio. We were optioned by Shoreline Entertainment, Morris Ruskin, that made Glengarry Glen Ross. And, ultimately, a couple of those movies, they didn't really take off. But, so it wasn't really a political ideological thing. However, two things happened when I launched Ravage Kill All Men. The first thing was a lot of people on the far left said, wow, this is a great comic. We also want to kill all men. And I'm like, well, just read the story. Then on the other side, some on the far right were saying, yeah, this is definitely an attack on third wave feminism. And it does have some of those elements, but it's really a character study of men and women. It's the moral of the story is that all men and all women have to work together for the world to keep spinning. Mm-hmm. And that's it. It's just a simple, straightforward story. It doesn't really fit on politics. It doesn't, it wasn't my agenda anyway. People could read into it whatever they'd like. But my main overarching goal is, hey, you give us $3 to $5. You're a comic book collector. We're going to make you entertained for that time that you spend with us.
Gotcha. The fact that you and your colleagues want to go back to that, it almost sounds subversive, this whole let's just entertain and provide escapism. Do you get the sense that maybe even in the big, I guess, the Marvels and the DCs, is there someone or some, I guess, spirit wanting to go back to that as well? I mean, do you think that you could be ahead of the curve in a certain way?
At the big companies, I don't think so, personally. I mean, look at, how Disney has reacted to political changes in the States. They don't react that way to foreign governments that often, do very terrible things. So the reason that they said they do that is because their staff is all ideologically on one side. There isn't really diversity there. They say it's diversity, but it's really not. You have to say the same things, think the same things, dress the same way. And it's boring, honestly, it's boring. So my answer is no. I guess I don't think they're going back to that. Mm-hmm. However, I see a lot of pros leaving the big two, starting their own indie comic labels, their own indie comic properties, which anybody can do with crowdfunding, and creating better stuff than any of the quote-unquote corporate entertainment can produce, right? Because it's boring. It just doesn't have that flavor of life when, like if you imagine if when you had a band that you loved, before they became big and then they got big, right? Corporate influence to me always takes away that pureness of the art. Mm-hmm. That's just my opinion. And, we want to bring it back to that pureness of the art that, everybody today is really, not everybody, but lots of people are making comics or even short TV shows online, hoping to audition for Hollywood. We decided with Chuck Dixon and Mike Barron and myself and Brett, we want to make pure comics. We don't care if they ever get made into a movie or TV show or anything. They stand alone for what they are.
Mm-hmm. But if they did, and if Hollywood did come calling, where do you think is the best fit for you? Do you see like a Netflix limited series? What would be sort of a nice kind of collaboration between some of your titles and the visual medium like Hollywood?
Honestly, I think maybe that's something my kids will have to deal with. Because I'm very torn on the subject. Would I want it to be widely viewed? Yeah, I would. Would I guess, let me take a step back. I think what I would like, it would be they would be turned into maybe smaller productions, $5 to $10 million movies, something that could actually be, edgy and cool again. Remember when like Tarantino did Reservoir Dogs? It was like a $5 million, $10 million, but maybe something like that. But it was cool, not the big studios weren't going to make that. Mm-hmm. A producer, Lawrence Bender, said, you know what, man, I see your vision. Let's rock and roll.
There is something glorious about that kind of guerrilla filmmaking, that style that, hey, we don't have a lot of money. We're going to improvise in the set. We're going to make it up as we go along. But we've got the passion. We've got the heart. And we're just going to let things go and see what happens. And often great things do happen.
Love it. And even, hey, we got everything scripted out, characterization, backstory, everything to build from. So, it would really just be creative ways to get it onto the screen. But honestly, that's just not my focus. I just want to make the comics as wonderful as they can be. Mm-hmm. They're all written as a 5-issue arc. So because I originally made them as screenplays, they're all, the truth is all of the stories have a screenplay equivalent that I wrote years ago.
Gotcha. When you think about, you're a writer, you're in the comic industry now, and you're an entrepreneur as well. What's been some of the biggest learning lessons of that journey? Because it ain't easy. I kind of left steady gigs behind in the past, and now I'm a I guess you can say the hip word is solopreneur. But from your perspective, what's jumped out at you about this whole process? And it could be good, it could be bad, it could be in between.
I think I was naive in a way. I guess everybody starting a new venture is naive when they start, but I was naive a couple of years ago on, how long the art would take to make, getting everything right with the printer, finding the right fulfillment company, dealing with shipping. We're doing, everything end to end. And we were actually looking to outsource some of our distribution. That didn't work out exactly the way we wanted, at least from fulfillment, not really distribution. So we brought in a new team. But basically, it's a temp team, but we're going to do the fulfillment in-house, so we have better quality control for the next Indiegogos. Mm-hmm. But yeah, That's where we're going from. I guess the other thing is, that I'll tell your audience is, hey, if you got a dream, if you got an idea, try to crowdfund it. Mm-hmm. You might think, oh, nobody's going to like that or nobody's going to buy it. Well, if that's what you think, you're right. That's the whole thing, right? Get out there and advocate for it. Like tell everybody why your stuff is cool.
Do you think you have some names behind you. Chuck Dixon kind of jumps out, obviously. But are there any sort of lessons for people who maybe are starting their first crowdfunding endeavor? Maybe they're new. Maybe they're in their 20s. Maybe they just don't have a lot of sort of background, but they have a plan, they have a skill, they have a dream. What kind of advice would you give them?
Couple things. Right now, do not pay money for advice on how to crowdfund. There's some shysters out there that have not run any successful campaigns themselves, but are going around saying, hey, we're going to teach you this, but give us $500 or something like that. Not just look at what people did before. Go on to YouTube. Everybody's listen to podcasts, listen to this, everybody's talking about what the things are. So, a couple of things to keep in mind. You never get a second chance to make the first impression, right? So make sure your Indiegogo or Kickstarter that you have a video, right? Everybody watches videos these days. Keep it tight, 30 seconds, and pitch your story. Number 2, create your log line, right? My log line is 2 Army veterans crash into an uncharted jungle populated by a lost tribe of warrior women that hunt and kill men. That's my elevator pitch for Ravage, nice. So try to get that down, get it concise. Then maybe find a partner that's an artist. That if you're a writer, find a partner that's an artist. If you're an artist, look for partners that are writers. They're out there, Then get the best art you can, and look at Indiegogos that have been successful and follow it. Mm-hmm. Right, follow that model.
That's great tips. I appreciate that. Before we let you go, Ben, let's flash forward 10 years. Cautionary Comics is still raring to go, still putting out different titles. Where do you see this line going? What's sort of your best case scenario for Cautionary Comics in a decade?
My best case scenario is that I have as many of my 50 titles produced as possible, mm-hmm. that they're at least out there for consumption. How many can I do in a decade? I'm not sure now because, right now it's one crowdfunding campaign a quarter. So that's 4 titles we can launch a year. And then, of course, I'm going to be doing, issues 2, 3, 4, and 5. I've written all of the stories in a 5-act, mini arc, 5-issue structure. So I at least want to get those all out. I think maybe in 10 years we might be in a position where we will put out a whole graphic novel quarterly, like the European style. I quite like that, and you get to ingest, the full story sitting right there, and I think that's where we're heading.
Excellent. Well, I think you're in the right direction for sure. Thanks again, Ben, for joining the HiTcast. Ben's new venture is Cautionary Comics, delivering comic books the way they're meant to be. Pure fun, pure escapism. I love it. You can sign up at offworldercomic.com. Enter your email to win some special surprises. There'll be links to all of this on the show notes page at hollywoodintoto.com. Ben, it's so nice to talk to you, and I really want to check in again, maybe in a year or two when you got some more stuff to share.
I love it. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks again for listening. Don't forget to check out hollywoodintoto.com for both the show notes and, of course, the latest entertainment news. Please follow me at Twitter at hollywoodintoto. And we'd love it if you leave a podcast review over at iTunes. See you next week.